Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 26th of April, comes to you from London. And the dollar holding up. We see how it's had a strong week. This has been the breakout week, really. And we saw the last few days we've had that really big move, and we've held on to those gains. So we're still bullish on all three time frames on the US dollar. Interestingly, the 1% point and figure chart still has a little bit of work to do to turn convincingly bullish, but the all the other charts are looking pretty strong. So dollar strength is still the key. Euro dollar weakness, and we see here we sank to new lows this week, and we've stayed there. Looking at the dollar yen chart, the dollar actually is looking a little bit more bearish here. So we may well see the dollar just pull back a bit after this breakout. Sterling we're seeing is sitting at 129. It's still looking bearish against the dollar long and short term, and we're back below the cloud on the medium term chart with a price, so it's looking less strong against that stronger dollar. Against the euro, sterling is actually looking quite good on the short term chart. In fact, we're bullish on all three time frames, so it is about euro weakness. The Swiss franc sterling is actually looking a little bit weak, but now below the cloud on the short term chart. And against the Aussie dollar, sterling has jumped quite significantly. Bitcoin holding on to the 5,000 level, but did fall away quite sharply overnight. We came back, and for a moment there we were below $5,000. So we're holding that, but we have turned short-term bearish for Bitcoin, so that's quite key. The US market was down slightly last night. The S&P 500 index was down. The Nasdaq was also lower, but the trends are still up. And we look at the Dow, we're down 0.5%, but still holding the bull trend. The broader based Russell index is still struggling to break to new highs. So we got quite a lot more work to do on the smaller caps. The futures this morning, the S&P future is down slightly, the Nasdaq future is up slightly. So a mixed picture at the moment for the US Open today. The UK market is down 1/3%, just taking the short-term cloud chart bearish. This is the 60-minute chart, so we are just seeing a little bit of a sell-off there, taking us into bearish territory. And midcaps holding on a little bit more strongly, so it's still the blue chips that have been hit. Stronger sterling probably not helping against the euro there. The DAX is fairly flat this morning, a little changed, and still looking bullish on the short-term chart. And the CAC Current also holding on up slightly this morning. Japan was down very slightly, and the Hang Seng Index little changed as well. China was down a further 1.2%, and that is taking us clearly short-term bearish. We do have a downside target of 1.4% lower from here, so we are just seeing a really looking like we might be just hitting resistance there on the lagging line, hitting the cloud. The Sensex in India was up 1/3%. That continues to power ahead, looking bullish on all three time frames, and the Aussie market little changed overnight. Looking at Brent crude, we've come back 1/3 of a dollar. We're back below the $75 level, nudging $74 now. No clear downside targets currently, but this high pole will give us a downside target if we activate that and move lower. And if we look at WTI, we're also just selling off into short-term bearish there. Interestingly, Brent crude holding its short-term bullish, WTI not doing so, so quite interesting there. US nat gas sitting at $2.50. That's taking its short-term bearish, but really still very much in the doldrums. Gold recovering a little bit at 12.80, so sitting still in bullish territory on the short-term chart. Finding some support here by the looks of things on the lagging line, but on a knife edge really. Quite a mixed picture. Maybe we're coming through on the cloud on the long-term chart, or hitting resistance. Hard to tell. Price is through, obviously, which is good, but at the moment we need a breakout. Silver is up 0.5% as well, and US 10-year yields just sitting at 2.53%, so still pretty much in the doldrums. Taking a look at the data coming, stocks, this data coming from Yahoo Finance, we see here that the Nasdaq was actually up last night, 0.4%. If we look first of all at the Dow, Merck was the best performer, up 2%. Boeing also up nearly 2%, so they're still taking the 737 crisis very much in their stride. And if we look at the worst performer, it was 3M, down a massive 13%, so quite a big fall there. That was what was driving the Dow lower yesterday, and Verizon were down 2%, so quite significant there. Um, Taking a look at the Nasdaq 100. Um, First of all, we look at the bearish chart. Facebook were up 10.7%, so on strong, sorry, 5.8%, up $10 on their strong results. So they've really starting to power ahead now, back into long-term bullish territory, outperforming the markets for some 15% this year. On the downside, we had Zelenex, they were down 17%, Tesla down a further 4%, looking pretty bearish now. Watching this 250 level is very critical for Tesla, and we've got quite a lot of downside targets there. Taking a look at the Aussie market, the best performer was Saracen Mineral Holdings. They were up 5.5%. On the downside, we've got Flight Centre down 11%, so they really just are still plummeting and breaking to new lows there. China, the picture was fairly bearish. We're down 5%. We only had about 6 stocks up in China, and some of these moves pretty big. China Northern Rare Earth were down 5.8%. Looking at the Nifty 50, we've got Tata Steel. They're up 6% this morning, and if we look at the downside, we've got Grisium down 2.4%. So still the relative looking quite bearish, although we have seen a recovery from the worst position in February. Taking a look at the European market this morning, first of all, we've got the FTSE 100. If we take a look at the best performer, it's Hill Pharmaceuticals. They had a pretty rough ride the last few months. They're actually just starting to look a little bit better. The relative's still sagging, so not quite clear there. Centrica hitting new lows, even though they're one of the best performers this morning. They're 30% below the Dow on performance this year, and WPP also looking a little bit like a recovery on the medium term. Here we see the live pricing coming in from Yahoo Finance. Royal Bank of Scotland down 6% on their results this morning. Profits down 12% on last year's quarter. So we are seeing a sell-off there. Glencore down a further 3.5% as well. Long term still in the doldrums. Looking at the 250, we've got Civitas Social Housing, Caledonian Investments. They're featuring quite a lot there, and Primary Health Properties also. And then Yahoo, we see here this morning on European Eurostock 60. Sanofi down 3%. Safran down up 2%, so looking better there. And if we look at the downside, we've got L'Oreal down 1.4%. And then here we see the live pricing coming in from Yahoo again as well. That's it for today. Until Monday, happy charting. See you then.